Hello.
Hello. Wow, that's an unusual opening for a podcast.
Yeah, I usually say your name. Bennett,
Daniel.
tell me one good thing about your life currently.
One good thing about my life.
Or interesting, or noteworthy, or just something you're doing. Or it could be kind of boring. I'm okay with that.
I just started playing a video game called Dragon's Dogma. It's an old game. It originally came out on the Xbox 360. I just started it yesterday, and it's pretty fun. So I won't really go into any depth on it. I'm right at the beginning of the game, but seems pretty cool. The character creator is really detailed. You can make a really detailed character, which is pretty nice.
I appreciate detail.
Yep.
Speaking of detail, one good thing about my life, or interesting, or just something, is Game of Thrones is like breaking records for the highest like opening for the season ever, and so I got a friend's HBO Go password, and I've watched the first 2 episodes of the entire series.
Of the series?
Not the recent one. It's all up there, but obviously I've never watched it before.
Don't read the books. It's just a waste of time. So watch. If you must waste your time, watch the TV show.
I feel like if I must waste my time, I feel like that's a controversial attitude, right? Like a lot of people would say, "Oh, the books are wonderful." Obviously, it's this sort of culturally significant piece of literature.
Yeah,
you disagree?
I definitely disagree that it's a culturally significant piece of literature. I agree with you that it's probably a controversial opinion. A lot of people have bad taste, so...
Oh, man. Well, that sounds like a huge topic that we could unpack for a while, but I'm really eager to play a game with you. Would you like to play a game, Bennett?
Yes, I would like to play a game. You never say
Good.
no to that question.
Yes. It's a good life tip right there. Okay, so I've tentatively named this game The Test Results Are In.
Okay. The test results are in.
Yeah. Okay, so here's how the game's going to be played. I've looked up a few unusual or rare psychological disorders. I will describe the disorders to you. We'll just handle them one at a time. And in which case you're going to play the role of the doctor who begins having to deliver this diagnosis. And you have to say I'll just role play as well, not the victim, the patient. That's it. The victim. So the test results are in, and magically next week you're going to have sudden onset, fill in the blank with the rare psychological disorder. And in which case I want you to downplay it because the patient will be freaking out, that's me, or at least uncomfortable, and you're going to try to make this rare and pretty intense psychological disorder sound like no big deal.
So I'm the doctor, and I have to accurately describe what you have, but try to sugarcoat it as much as possible and try to play it off as it's no big deal. Am I understanding that correctly?
You are.
All right,
and obviously I'm not a doctor here, and I'm going to give you...
I have a good bedside manner.
I don't... Okay. I have no concept of all the science behind it. So you can kind of make it up if I'm asking you questions, because once I've revealed to you
that's what doctors do anyway.
I'm pretty sure it's a realistic game. It's role-playing like real doctors do. And so
there's a real science to making up justifications for disorders.
There's a science behind it, absolutely. So I'll give you pretty much all the information I have, and we're not going to belabor the point or stay on it too much. I just won't be able to answer your questions. I'll just give you the idea. You'll get it, and then we'll play the game.
Even if it's not completely accurate, we'll still be able to manage the game. So.
I'm less interested in the science behind it. I mean, we can discuss the psychology and philosophy and all of that. But anyway, all right. So our first disorder is known as the Kluver-Bucy syndrome. Kluver-Bucy syndrome. Think of it hyphenated. It's like 2 names. Kluver-Bucy. That's my assumption anyway. Yeah.
So this is... I think I know what this one is.
Give it a guess.
I'm pretty sure this is that thing where you... imagine that everyone else is Gary Busey.
How very
and they're
of you.
They're all out to get you, right? Yeah. They're all very Kluver Busey's.
Very Very close, actually. All right.
Really?
Imagine this. You're craving the taste of a book or wanting to have sex with a car. That's reality for those affected by Kluver-Bucy syndrome, a rare behavioral impairment characterized by inappropriate sexual behaviors and mouthing of objects. Other signs and symptoms include a diminished ability to visually recognize objects, loss of normal fear and anger responses, memory loss, distractibility, seizures, and dementia. Those with Kluver-Bucy syndrome often have trouble recognizing objects, like we were saying, or people that should be familiar. Difficult to diagnose. It lasts pretty much forever and is associated with some head injuries to the temporal lobe. But essentially, the pattern that seems to emerge is like finding inanimate objects that you lust after, you want to have sex with them, and wanting to put your mouth on inanimate objects like books. And cars seem to be a pattern. People like are, I don't want to say falling in love with cars, but really wanting to, do it with the car.
Yeah, do it.
Kluver-Bucy syndrome.
Wow. Okay. So it's not, books and cars just happen to rise to the top, but it could be any object.
Absolutely.
And they have trouble with object recognition just in general. So like if there's like a basketball, then they have some trouble figuring out what it is.
Yes,
maybe?
Exactly. So the syndrome the syndrome often, people that suffer with the syndrome often have trouble recognizing objects or people that should be familiar. It's associated with the result of like severe injuries to the brain.
Right.
And so like head trauma leads to this sort of fuzzy thinking, but then it's almost like your sex drive wires get crossed and now you're attracted to things you shouldn't be attracted to. And yeah, if I were to show you a basketball, you might be like, what is that? Not just
while
like a word recall, but about while being attracted to it. But it's not just a word recall, like you recognize it and you go, oh, what's the word for that? It's not like that. It's like confusion, and like you might not recognize people. Like it's just some of the recognition software in your brain is messed up.
Okay. Weird. What a strange thing.
Interesting, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh man. Like your biological drive.
How
your sex drive.
Is it a temporary thing, or is it permanent, or?
Okay, so yeah, unfortunately, there's not a cure for it, and sufferers are often affected for the rest of their lives. And what they do is they
sucks.
Treatment is
I guess,
symptomatic. Oh, it definitely sucks. The treatment is
I don't
symptomatic.
know. That you no longer have to be limited to just other humans for the object of the literal object of your attraction. No worries about objectification because they're objects already. So
well, that is looking on the. You're already getting into the game, I suppose. We should start. The results are in.
So we got your test results back, and it looks like you got a little bit of Kluver-Bucy syndrome.
Kluver-Bucy syndrome. What's
that? So it's a little disorder where it'll just kind of. It's nothing too major. It'll just kind of affect the way you see and think about some of your stuff, some of your physical belongings. So we're gonna send you on home, and
some of the way I see things, like, is it a visual impairment?
Oh no, not at all. Absolutely nothing wrong with your eyes. You got great vision.
That's good.
Yep. So just it may be when you get home and you take a look at your silverware or something. You might have some kind of strange feelings. But I just want you to ignore that stuff and just try to. So,
like what? Like, what do you mean strange feelings? I'm looking at my silverware. I understand that it's silverware, and I can see fine, and I'm having strange feelings. I don't understand.
Well, you might find that you have some euphoric feelings, some very positive and strange feelings when you see certain objects. And I just want to let you know that this is not life-threatening. So you might even find yourself getting kind of aroused, getting your sexuality aroused.
Whoa.
By
Wait. Are you saying I'm aroused by the forks and the silverware and like objects in my household?
Yeah. Not to put too fine a point on it, but yes. So yeah, that's about it. We're just gonna send you on home here. But look, hey, this may
so bad. You've convinced me.
No, this look, don't look at it in such a negative light. I mean, these are positive feelings of desire and love, even love. These are things that take years to develop with a human, and the other human has to like you too. But now you can form these sorts of feelings with just objects lying around, and you could have a wonderful, fulfilling relationship potentially with, an air pump or your television remote, or.
Well, this sounds more like a superpower than a disorder to me.
That's what we try to do here at this hospital is diagnose people with superpowers.
Oh man. Well, I'm convinced, I guess.
Good. All right. Bye.
It's okay. It's okay.
If you'll just sign here on this clipboard.
Oh man. I don't see how we can spin sexual attraction to objects is just this sort of like no big deal thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm breaking character. It's just an interesting. I mean, I guess like what are there genuine positives to this? Is it not a big deal to be sexually attracted to inanimate objects? Like are we culturally conditioned to believe that's gross, or is there really something problematic?
I mean, it depends on the actions you take, right? I mean, I think probably the object recognition is a bigger deal because that could actually, if you mistake something dangerous for something not dangerous, that could, actually cause you harm. But like if you just find certain physical forms of objects, like maybe the lines, the curves on a car, just really sexy for some reason, then like that's strange, but I mean that's not really going to necessarily cause you harm.
Well, it's funny, when I read this, it didn't surprise me that cars rise to the surface. And I think, okay, so like I jokingly, or not even jokingly, we call cars sexy, or we'll call things that are, if something's packaged in a really appealing way that's aesthetically pleasing and all of that, I'll say,
that you want to bang.
Packaging. Yeah.
I really want to bang that package.
Well, that's the thing, is I'll call something sexy, or I'll even describe when I'm talking to colleagues about teaching, and I'll say, you got to really make the lesson sexy, insert whatever joke you want there. But my point is like to put pizzazz behind it, to flash, to make it flashy, and so cars are arguably one of the like sexier things, or that we spend time putting pizzazz and flash, and it's a status symbol, and there are curves, and we I guess traditionally would call a car like a if you want to personify it, it's typically a female, these sports cars with all the curves and things like that. So if that sort of sinks into our brains, and then you're diagnosed with, if you're diagnosed with Kluver-Bucy syndrome, I suppose that like you're pulling from things you understand in the world. And if you understand cars to be sexy, maybe you want to, do it with a car.
Yeah. I mean,
that makes some sort of sense, right?
No, that does make sense. I was just thinking about it. Like that makes sense. That's plausible. I mean, I guess that's the thing about all of these disorders, is just that they deal with neurological problems, and we know so little about the brain and how it works that all of it is just so mysterious.
Well, and wires getting crossed from, like, especially in the laws of attraction, like it's unlikely that you might be indifferent or repulsed by something and then all of a sudden feel extreme, attraction to. But if the attraction just shifts, like attraction from I like this object, I enjoy this object, to, and then your wires of attraction, now you're attracted to it in that sexual way, like you just crossed over accidentally.
Well, I mean, I guess too, I kind of brushed over the whole oral fixation part of it as well.
The mouthing,
wanting
that
to
word.
put your mouth on it and just make out with objects. Like, how strange would it be if, like, we were hanging out and I was like, hey, let's go grab some dinner or whatever, and we go outside. And you go outside before me, and when I come out there, you're like licking your vehicle, just like, oh God. I mean, that would be so bizarre.
Would you? Okay, I guess any of these disorders, they don't manifest in isolation, hardly ever, right? Like, it's a whole slew of problems, like it was saying, like it's associated with dementia and seizures and distractibility and memory loss and all these different things. But it's more amusing as a mental exercise to imagine, like, I'm exactly the same, but now I just lick my car a lot when I go out to it. Like how much does that affect our relationship? It should presumably, like, have no effect. Like, you and I, same sense of humor, same discussions. I just really like licking my car a lot. Like, why does that affect you at all? It wouldn't affect our friendship, I guess.
If it was in isolation, then I guess not. But I'm not giving you a ride anywhere, unless my car's dirty. I guess real dirty.
Yeah, free car wash. Okay, you ready for the next disorder?
Yes, bring it on. Give me that disorder.
Here we go. It's called boanthropy.
Boanthropy.
Yes.
That's a rare disorder that only affects people named Bo, and they just waste away to nothing.
Very close.
Good.
All right. So those who suffer from the very rare but very scary mental disorder boanthropy believe they are cows, often going as far as to behave as such. Sometimes those with boanthropy are even found in fields with cows, walking on all fours and chewing grass as if they were a true member of the herd. Those with boanthropy do not seem to realize what they're doing when they act like a cow, leading researchers to believe that this odd mental disorder is brought on by dreams or even hypnotism. Interestingly, it is believed that boanthropy is even referred to in the Bible, as King Nebuchadnezzar is described as being, quote, driven from men and did eat grass as oxen. So it still occurs today when a person in a delusional state believes himself or herself to be an ox or cow and attempts to live and behave accordingly. Boanthropy.
Wow. Well, I can't say that... Well, I'm very skeptical. Like, I mean, this... Like, I'm just very skeptical that there's not a conscious element to this. That someone's like, you know what? I'm just gonna... You know what? My life sucks, and maybe I had too many drug benders, and I want some attention. I'm just gonna act like a cow.
Yeah, because why can't, like, the idea that this pattern emerges, we talked about, like, wires get crossed and things have gone wrong, but, like, that a pattern would emerge that they're like, man, this is the fifth person this week that's, behaving like a cow. We need to name this thing. Like, I get that people might behave so strangely that they check out, and then maybe even, this actually is a subset of a larger disorder set where people believe that they become animals or can become animals, but this is a specific
that's called
one.
Furry.
Yeah, but that's not a disorder, that's a celebration.
Hey, don't go too far.
Yeah, but to think that there's, okay, people becoming like animals seems to be a tendency when someone's maybe depressed, like you were saying, or something has gone wrong and then they decide. But this suggests that cows specifically, and the link to hypnotism, I just don't know how I feel about that. But it is, recognized by whoever and whatever, psychological disorder, whatever. It's a real thing, apparently.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't. Do you want to play this? You want to pitch this as a doctor trying to convince me, or do we want to just talk about it?
I don't feel like I'm very good at that. I'm not a very good doctor actor.
I don't know. Maybe I just doctor actor. I don't know what I wish actually what we could do is have a third person on who has not heard what we were just talking about, then have them role play. But me playing the role feels a bit contrived, a little bit silly.
I mean, well, it's hard too because you're not like you're essentially a normal person, and I'm telling you you're not normal, but you're reacting normally.
Right. Well, that's why I said sudden onset. Within next week, it would be a sudden onset. Like you're going to have this, and it's just all a contrived concoction to make this work. But yeah, who would have thought there were cows or people that believe that they were specifically cows as opposed to any other animal? And one site I was reading said there's some danger in this that people will be found. They're not getting the nutrients they need. They will disappear, and they'll find them days later. So that's devotion to if it's not a disorder in which you don't know what you're doing. You are devoted. You're not pulling the wool over someone's eyes. You just seem to be actually into it. So
yeah. Well, like a lot of these things. I mean, there's no denying that they're not neurotypical. I mean, something's up, but humans are we're conscious. We know what's going on, and even if you have a disorder, a lot of times you have a disorder and you're not normal, and you still do the stuff. So, like, I just have a hard time believing, without, of course, having never heard of this and never seen anyone with boanthropy. I just have a hard time believing that they don't know what's up, and they're just following their demented impulses and going and eating some grass and jingling their neck bells and stuff.
Do you think you're speaking... I mean, I feel like most people would tend to agree with you, just a suspicion of it. Do you think that there's a natural suspicion that mentally healthy people have an inability to comprehend the instability someone else is having, and so they're going through an experience that is something that is so foreign to the mentally healthy person, so they tell you, or whether it's something as a little simpler like depression, and they're saying I can't get off the couch, or I just can't do it, and then the mentally healthy person is like, well, you're just suspicious because you're like, I mean, you can, do you think that's playing into your suspicion? And like, how big of a problem is that? Like, how can you possibly, if you can't understand, do you just have to should you remain suspicious? Should you trust without questioning, or should you fall somewhere in between? Like, I don't know what the answer is. Did any of that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, certainly because I'm unfamiliar with this condition. Like, I literally have never heard of it before you told me about it. I mean, who knows? Maybe there is some higher level of legitimacy to it that I'm not aware of. I think when it comes to mental illness in general, especially the high-functioning disorders, personality disorders, and that sort of thing, like, a lot of these things don't directly impair your ability to reason. And so there's a certain element of will that's involved with these things. Like when a depressed person is on the couch and they say, I can't get off the couch. Yes, they can. They can get off the couch. They may not want to, and they may have a legitimate and debilitating mental state that really makes things hard for them. I'm not denying that, but they can get off the couch. So when they say things like, I can't get off the couch, I'm suspicious of that because it's not true. When a person says, I'm a cow, well, I'm suspicious of that because it's not true. You're obviously not a cow. You can move your hands, you can move your mouth, you understand eating, you can go pick up some grass and put it in your mouth. Like,
so you'll believe that they think that they're a cow, but obviously won't. No one will believe that they are a cow.
Obviously, I don't believe they're a cow. I believe that they're having some sort of issue, but they are still conscious and capable of reasoning, presumably. And so there's some inconsistency to it, right? Like if I can ask this person with boanthropy, all right, person with boanthropy, here's an animal. What is this? And I have a dog in my hands, and they say, "Oh, that's a dog. That's my dog."
If they can speak, yeah. I don't know what spectrum, if they're like full blown into it and they're a cow.
Okay.
I mean, are they
moo
just...
once if this is a dog, and moo twice if this is an antelope, and they go moo. Then they can recognize that it's a dog.
So now let's say they're fully committed. They're like kind of ignoring you, and they're on all fours, and maybe they just fart in your general direction, and they're just like chewing the grass, and you're just trying to communicate. And they give you this dead-eyed look, that a cow has. Like okay, like. I mean, I actually imagine that being the case. Like you find them in a, in a field with other cows, and you're like, "Hey, you need to come home," and they're just not responding, just like a cow would. Like that's what I'm imagining, the full blown committed episode of boanthropy, I guess. Which I mean, it would just be so unreasonable. You'd start to pick them up, and they'd just kind of go. I shouldn't laugh if it's like a serious thing, but it's just so cartoonish.
It is cartoonish.
Yeah. Compare this. Okay, so take alcoholism. So someone says like, like it's recognized as a disease, and like the impulse is over. I guess the story goes, not the story, but the narrative is something like, okay, their impulse is beyond comprehension for someone who doesn't have it. So when they say like they have a relapse, and there's this degree of, I can't help it because the impulse was stronger than, and obviously, really quickly though, obviously like the alcohol did not leap off the shelf and into their mouth. Like no one's claiming that like, their hand had to do it, and they had to have some form of conscious decision making. But then I hear people say, no, it wasn't a decision. It was had to happen. I just don't know where to.
I mean, I hear that a lot, even from people I respect. They say that at some level it ceases to be a decision, and addictive drugs and addictive substances, and it robs you of your ability to actually make decisions and be an individual. And I hear that, and I'm willing to entertain it. I'm very skeptical. Like, I mean. You still make a decision. Like, you still make a decision, and after you make the decision, you're still aware that you made the wrong decision. You gave in, and you failed. And it sucks. It sucks, and, like, I get that. But you still had the ability to make the decision, and you failed at that decision.
So do you think that they're trying to distance themselves from the failure? Or are they saying, perhaps, that literally, if the impulse is so strong that you don't have a decision, you're actually confessing that in some ways you're not an autonomous being anymore. Like it is literally like soul sucking in the sense that you've given over a piece of your humanity. Like you no longer are this human who operates in the world and makes decisions. Like you are actually, and that is. Wow, that's heavier than saying to me than saying I failed.
That's why I think that's a lot of my resistance to it, because if I was in the situation of being addicted to heroin or having alcoholism or really wanting to lick some cars, then like if someone told me, "Well, you're just a victim of this disorder. You can't help yourself. Essentially you're a lost cause, and this is just who you are now." Like that would be more of a crushing blow than saying like, "Hey, like, you are still capable of the decisions of what to do, and I know it's really hard, and you may have failed a lot, but you can still beat this car licking."
Well, so you're saying, if the message is you can't help it, well then when you have an impulse to drink or to lick a car or whatever, then you're more likely to give in to that impulse, because after all, there's no reason to forgive yourself, because if you cannot help it, then you've not done anything wrong. You're just like now susceptible to the whims of your bodily desires, and you cannot combat that because you cannot help it, and there's nothing to do. There's no advancement to make. And that's I mean, the reason I think you resist, and I think I do too, is that the message it should be you have some control and exercise that control to the best of your extent. Even if the sad truth might be that you have a little less than I'd like to believe, we still must put our trust in our ability to overcome, because without it, then I'm just going to slide more than I ever would have otherwise.
Right. Yep. Ugh. So even, I guess some people, they just have a liquor problem.
Whether it's liquor car or...
I see a car, I want a liquor.
Yeah. I've got one more disorder I'd like to
give it to me. Give me that disorder.
Okay, this one's a little bit difficult to say. I'll give it to you. Apotemnophilia.
Apotemnophilia.
Apotemnophilia for those that were interested. Apotemnophilia.
So I would have thought this one would fit more with Kluver-Bucy syndrome, because it sounds to me like they're sexually aroused by pots.
Potted plants, actually. No, very close, but here we go. Known also as body integrity disorder, I like that a lot better, and amputee identity disorder, apotemnophilia is a neurological disorder characterized by the overwhelming desire to amputate or damage healthy parts of the body. And not much is known about this disorder. It's believed to be associated with damage to the right parietal lobe of the brain. Parietal, pardon me. Because the vast majority of surgeons will not amputate healthy limbs upon request, some sufferers of apotemnophilia feel forced to amputate on their own. So, so you have a healthy arm, and there's an episode of Nip Tuck I recall about a guy saying, "I need this limb gone."
You told me about that before. That's where I've heard of it.
Probably so. It was a fascinating episode. He claimed that it caused him pain, but they suspected he was lying, and there were no indications that anything was wrong. And he said, "Okay, maybe it's not like a physical pain, but I just need I need it gone." So, what do you think that means? I mean, to me, it must be you must feel some disconnect between the physical body you have and the person you are, and the discomfort of that.
Yeah, it reminds me of kinds of body dysmorphia, like anorexia or bulimia and stuff, where you can be rail thin, but look in the mirror and
believe you're fat.
Believe you're fat. Is how it's been portrayed to me anyway. Which is strange to think about that. What is it like to just think that your arm doesn't belong on you? It should be gone.
It's what's to say, and why does it limit itself? Why isn't it I should have a third arm, or what? If it's, I guess it's just what exists. I found another website that characterized it this way. This is a slight different characterization. It's a disorder characterized by a desire to be disabled. A person feels discomfort with being able-bodied, beginning in early adolescence, resulting in harmful consequences. People with this condition may refer to themselves as transabled. Literally, I'm not making that up. Transabled.
I like how you had to immediately tell me that it was not a joke.
Yeah. Well, I didn't pepper any jokes into these,
right, sure.
They're born in this able body, but they belong in a disabled one.
All right. Well,
I want to be clear that my laughter is I don't know. I don't want to laugh at genuine disorders and struggles that people have.
Right, yeah.
I really don't.
I mean, I hope that that's clear. People who have these disorders and really suffer, that sucks. And, I wish that wasn't the case. But again, and maybe this is just because I'm a really skeptical person, things where people say, I should be disabled, this sounds more like... This sounds more like some kind of teenage angsty narcissism stuff, And maybe there are, and I presume because this has a fancy name and everything, that there are legitimate cases where people are ready to chop their arm off and they don't care about the social consequences. It's because they really want that arm gone, and for those people, that's weird sucks, and like, man, that's a strange disorder. But I feel like there's some non-negligibly larger section of people who probably also have some sort of mental stuff going on, but they are choosing these kinds of behaviors and terminologies for their behaviors and putting on a show for whatever reason.
Well, I think the reason's pretty clear. If we elevate victim status, or if we champion the idea of you are, insert whatever victim or oppression or whatever, but if you can advance in this sort of prestige economy, I don't mean to throw that term out there, but if you can advance because of this, and you have a demonstrable victim badge by your missing arm or whatever, like, that's appealing.
That's something, but like, I find it. All right, yes, I'm sure that probably happens as well. But like, for this apotemnophilia, like, if you feel like you should be disabled, that seems to me more like a manifestation of guilt. Like, for whatever reason, you're ashamed of who you are, and the fact that you are fully able, and maybe you've been around disabled people, or maybe you have been told overwhelmingly about the plight of disabled people, and you can't take it that people out there exist who really have it bad, and you don't have it that bad,
and you haven't
you
used
your
like gifts. Maybe you don't feel like you
haven't earned your ableness. You feel worthless or low or unworthy of your ability, and so you feel like you should be disabled. There are better people out there than me who are disabled. This is wrong. I should be the disabled one.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Guilt fueling,
rather than the motivation being like, I'm boring and I want some attention. Like, I'm gonna call myself trans-abled. Like, yeah, sure, maybe that happens, but that just doesn't seem like as strong of a motivation to me. Like, why stick to that story?
No, I agree with you. In fact, I think what happens, if I'm going to make a bold and possibly ignorant claim about mental disorders, but they begin with some sort of baseline depression and intense dissatisfaction with the world and their place in it. And I'm talking not just like I'm kind of having a bad day, but I am talking like diagnosable, like chemically measurable depression. Mm-hmm. And then the brain does funny things from there, right? Like, you start some thought spiral down something, and then you end up developing this wacky coping mechanism, like licking cars, or some of it's head trauma. That's
right, head trauma
so
stuff. There's a distinction to be made about the time of onset of these things. So, mm-hmm. like, if someone smacks you in the head with a brick and your behavior changes, shortly after, like, I think even the skeptic in me will recognize that, this person is not faking it, right? Like, something has now been damaged inside their head. Yeah. But if they are normal up to a point, they're 12 years old or whatever, relatively normal, they can make their own conscious decisions and recognize objects, and they don't lick my car, like, none of that stuff happens. And then, like, gradually over this weird period from when they're 12 to 14, their behavior starts getting real strange, and then they're in their room all the time or whatever, and then, like, they decide that it's or this condition just slowly develops over a couple of years, and then it turns out in some big reveal that they're come home and they're out in the backyard, like, eating grass and wearing a bell around their neck or something.
Yeah.
Like, I'm more skeptical of that. And granted, like, I'll give the devil his due here, that these sorts of slow developing disorders, part of the mystery and part of the stigma is that we can't see what's going on inside the brain. And so, like, we don't have the capability to really understand what's going on in there. And so the people who are legitimately suffering from these things feel like there's no way to prove their situation. because you can't just say, "Oh, measure my boanthropy levels and then you'll see." Like, it doesn't work like that. It's all buried deep inside your brain, and it's a matter of finely balanced neurochemicals and stuff. And so, like, we can't even diagnose that stuff. It's not like you can hook your brain up to the brain scanner and they point and go, "Yep, there's like a little cow-shaped blot on there," or something, and they're like, "Oh, yep, there it is." Like, it doesn't work like that. And so, the skepticism, I don't think, will go away until we have an objective way to diagnose these things.
I want to push back a little bit, though. So I understand the clear distinction of getting whacked on the head, and there's this sudden onset change in the way you process the world, and that's basically brain damage. Whatever happened is some form of brain damage. And,
sure.
And what you described, we'll just say a slow onset, right? And so it's the skepticism. I can understand it, but I don't think that the slow development somehow makes the manifestation less valid. But it does, to me, make it in some ways more tragic, because there were all these opportunities to maybe interfere or
I'm not saying that it's less valid necessarily. I'm actually trying to throw a bone to these people and say that the reason why there's skepticism is because we can't see what's going on inside the brain. And so I sympathize. If you had a disorder like this, and truly something was just as wrong as if you got hit in the head with a brick, but there's no way to prove it. There's no scientific way to prove this other than living it over a long period of time until people eventually say "Oh, well, I guess they really are, a cow on the inside."
Yeah. Well, let me throw this out. What if we can't prove it, or maybe we're way further away from proving these sort of the mental disorders than we want to believe? Does it matter that we can or can't prove it? If someone's saying I am suffering,
yes, obviously it matters, because if there is a system in which you gain benefits from your disabled status, then if there's an incentive for that, then there's an incentive for people not being legitimate and to abuse the system. And that sucks, because the people out there who legitimately have this issue, then have to jump through a bunch of hoops in order to, get the care that they need. But if you have a system which incentivizes, this benefits for any kind of illness or disorder, then you're going to have people who try to take advantage of that system. And so we have to care about this, and we have to look at these sorts of things, with a discerning eye. And that's not to say that we should be completely cold and heartless about it, but you do have to use some amount of discernment.
I agree with that, but what if this incentives, it's not if you claim to have boanthropy, we're going to throw cash at you, because then you're going to have everyone and their mother saying I have boanthropy. But what if it was, the incentive was simply relief through some targeted...
Put them out to pasture.
Nice. But if those incentives or whatever we want to call it, the gains were so targeted, so if someone's I have relief, theoretically, if it's I have headaches, and we have a pill, and there's no, it doesn't get you high, it doesn't do anything but relieve headaches, and so what incentive to say I have a headache would you have other than wanting that headache relieving, thing? So it wouldn't be beneficial. People wouldn't be abusing the system trying to get this headache relieving pill if it didn't do anything but relieve headaches. Only those asking for the headache meds would have headaches, presumably. So
sure.
That's,
and
ideal
if we could
right?
build a system in which we perfectly tailor the treatment to the disorder, and there's no other way to use the treatment except to treat the disorder, fine, then no problem. But that's not the way it is.
I just would like to think, and maybe this is naive of me, that most people saying I'm suffering, they might even be exaggerating or lying about the specific area in which they're suffering. But if they're saying I'm suffering, it tends to be true. Not a lot of people are just totally fine and saying I'm suffering, because to take on the lifestyle of suffering to me seems like a form of suffering. It's like it's a laborious and exhausting and terrible process to go around being like, I'm sick, and having to play that role, and you know.
I mean, yeah, I see what you're saying. And I mean, certainly if it were up to me, I would prefer my normal not suffering and not claiming to be suffering way of life. But try to imagine yourself in a really crappy life situation. Like, you just don't have any prospects in the not suffering route of your life. No obvious prospects. You don't have a lot of willpower, and like maybe you have really bad circumstances too. And like in that situation, like when your non-suffering life looks pretty dismal, if you can take on this faux suffering life, then that lifestyle might actually be better for you.
I suppose that's fair, especially if it gives you a reprieve from, like, maybe you've made bad choices, but now you say, I'm a sufferer, and maybe that's why I made the bad choices. Or don't be mad, or don't hold me accountable, I'm a sufferer. I mean, I think we've had the experiences where you tell your coworkers or friends or whatever, hey, I've had a bad day, and then their reaction is to go, oh, I'm sorry, and kind of, you know, just cut you some slack and be kinder, and like that feels good. So I could see a sort of snowball effect of saying I feel bad, and then getting people to be nice, and then you don't have to hold yourself to the highest standards. You can say, you know, I'm just gonna cut myself a break and do a bad job on this particular project. I'm just gonna get it done, and I would do my best work because I really like my best work, but I'm suffering. And so if you allow yourself to feed that narrative, then you could end up as sort of habitual sufferer and exaggerate it, and, you know, try and reap those sort of incentives or benefits. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And it's sad to me.
Yeah, well, as far as the answers as to what kind of system we should have to deal with this sort of thing, that's something I would have to think about more, I think. I don't think it's so cut and dry. Because you have to, I mean, because we don't know enough about the brain, like, you have to be willing to accept the possibility that, you know, weird things can go on in there and weird behaviors can come out of it. So, like, you can't just be completely skeptical and unwilling to bend on the stuff. You have to be willing to examine it. But never underestimate people's ability to be really tricky and conniving, and, you know, even if the benefits to you seem not worth it, simply getting attention or notoriety can be motivation enough for some people to act really strangely.
I 100% agree. Absolutely.
Let's take a turn. We haven't done Superpowers and Drawbacks in a number of podcasts, and I've been really itching to do it again because I have a huge list of really good ones.
Superpowers and Drawbacks. I'm ready. I'm game. I'm there. Let's go.
All right. So I really struggled picking this time because, like I said, I have a huge list. But I think this time we're gonna go with a level 2 superpower and drawbacks. So This is on a scale of 1 to 10. I think we've only done 1s and 2s. I have some higher level ones, but I think I decided on the 2s.
The lowers are just more interesting.
Yeah. So, I've got some good ones here, and I will...
Remind me of the format. Are you going to give me 3?
Yeah, so I'll give you two superpowers and 2 drawbacks. You have to pick 1 superpower and 1 drawback. You have to get them both. You don't get a superpower unless you pick a drawback. Or you can, I guess, choose to just walk away and not take any of them.
I will select a pair, and then I will decide whether I would actually take it or not.
Yeah, sure.
I'll select the favorable pair, the most favorable pair, and then I'll select whether I would actually take it or not.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you just make your decision. So I'm a genie, and I have these 2 superpowers that I can grant to you. And if you want one of those, you got to take one of these drawbacks, or you can say, "See ya, genie. I'm not doing this thing."
Awesome. Let's hear the superpowers.
All right. So we are going to choose these 2. All right. So I named them all. The first superpower is called bibliokinesis.
Oh, okay. So it's like a
and
book.
I'll tell you the names of them first, and then I'll explain them to you. So bibliokinesis is the first superpower, and then clocked out is the second superpower.
Okay.
Anyone you're leaning towards so far?
Bibliokinesis just sounds cooler.
The first drawback is mind your manners, and the second drawback is say my name, say my name.
Okay.
So,
mind your manners sounds a little. I mean, there's something annoying about the repetition and command of "say my name," and a little intense. So,
which one do you want to hear about first?
Bibliokinesis.
So, bibliokinesis is the potential superpower. With this superpower, you can levitate a single book as long as it's within 2 feet of you. It doesn't take hardly any concentration to do this, no more concentration than it would take to hold the book in your hand. And you have enough control when you're levitating the book, you can manipulate it with just as much dexterity as you would have with your fingers.
Okay, so I could read in bed.
Yep,
and
so
I
you could
impress
read and
people at parties. And
Yep, sure. You could turn the pages, So essentially the ability to read a book without using your hands in a pretty fancy way.
Could I put objects on top of it and then elevate the book? Like, can I lift heavier objects, or is that the equivalent of like doing it with my hands?
Only the book. Anything you put on the book falls off.
Okay, gotcha.
So, yeah. So not quite as equivalent, but
pretty clear.
You can only levitate the book.
Okay.
The other superpower, I'll just go to that one. It's called clocked out. So with this one, you can program your sleep. In the same way that you can program your computer to sleep. So you can set a time to fall asleep and a time to wake up, and during that period you're guaranteed to sleep soundly.
So appealing. An instant, right?
Yes, instant. So you set your body to fall asleep at 10 p.m. and at 10 p.m. you close your eyes and lay your head down and you're straight sound asleep. It's still possible. This isn't some kind of there's no drawback inherent in this.
So if there's a fire, there's a safety mechanism.
Yeah, you can still be woken up.
Okay.
It's more difficult. You're in deep sleep, so you're really asleep. But if someone shook you and said "Hey, Daniel, wake up," you would still wake up.
Okay,
so
good.
It's not like you're completely dead to the world during this time. It's just you have nice sound sleep throughout the night. Even if you have to go to the bathroom during the middle of the night, that'll still wake you up.
Does this apply if I had an hour break at work and I could really, for whatever reason, use this? I could do it and sleep, take a nap on the desk for an hour.
Yeah, that's how it works. So anytime you need to sleep, you can program your start and wake time.
Car rides and things like that, I could just check out.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, the circumstances don't matter. You'll just you'll sleep pretty soundly. But so, and I guess if you're on a car ride, and I guess the better way to classify it would be any situation in which you could normally sleep.
Yeah.
That
on
you'll
a
just
roller coaster would not work or something.
Yeah. I think that's probably the best way to do it.
Okay. I like these.
So hopefully those are pretty close in power in your mind. Anyway, I tried to pick kind of close ones. So, but in order to get one of those, you have to take one of the drawbacks. And the first one is mind your manners. So anytime you're in your own home, if you want your appliances or plumbing or electronics to work, you have to ask them politely to work for you. So if you are trying to turn on your faucet, you have to say, "Faucet, please turn on," while you turn the knob, and then it'll give you some water. Or for you, "Noisemaker, please make noise while I sleep."
Electrofan.
Electrofan.
Please make white noise.
Please make white noise for me. You have to be polite. This doesn't. So just to be clear, the objects can't disobey. So
they're not going to be stubborn. I'm not going to have to really coax it and
no. You just have to ask.
Sugar on top.
No, you don't have to do that. That you don't have to ask nicer and nicer. If you punch your toilet a bunch and then say "please flush," it'll still flush. It doesn't understand any of that. But you have to ask it to please flush, and you have to be polite.
Door please open, or doors and drawers a little different.
No, so purely mechanical objects like drawers and doors. No, so we'll draw the line at, even though plumbing is mechanical, I'm gonna say plumbing. So your sink and your toilet and your shower, Those you have to ask. Appliances like your dishwasher, washing machine, your light switches, you have to ask the lights to turn on, your TV, that kind of thing.
Got it.
And just, I think you get it, but they don't work automatically. So simply saying, light turn on doesn't turn on your light. You have to flip the switch too.
Yeah. So have to physically do it after asking politely for permission.
Yeah. Otherwise, if you don't ask and you just flip the switch, nothing happens.
Gotcha.
And you turn the faucet knob, no water comes out until you ask. Yeah, mildly annoying. About a 2 out of 10. The other one, the last one, say my name, say my name. So this drawback is when anyone says your name, it's completely inaudible to you the first time they say it. So
they have to say it again.
If you're not looking at them and can tell that they're talking to you, you just cannot hear it. Those sound waves do not reach your ears the first time someone says your name, and this period resets every minute. So
I like the title of that. See if you repeat yourself.
Yeah. Thanks.
Clever.
Yeah.
Clover.
Yep. Very, very clever. I'm a clever Busey. Yep. So I guess that one makes sense. So those are the options. Which ones do you prefer?
All right. My knee jerk is to. Well, I guess I don't have a knee jerk. Let's go over those. It's bibliokinesis.
Yep. Book levitation.
Yeah. The second one's escaping me already. The name of it.
Clocked out. Sleep programming.
The sleep programming.
Mind your manners.
Mind your manners. And
say my name. Say my name.
Say my name. Say my name. So I really like clocked out and mind your manners. The sleep thing, I struggle with sleep, so I know what it's like to go to be underslept frequently, and the idea of having perfect sleep is amazing. It's absolutely amazing to me. It would change the way I travel. It would change the way, the amount I go camping. And it would just give me literally a fresh outlook on life because I would be refreshed.
Is the reason you don't go camping because you can't sleep well?
No. I want to camp more. I've even bought some equipment and things like that. But it's a draw. When I'm there, it's a drawback for sure. It's the least comfortable. It's the worst part about camping is when it's time to fall asleep. That is just really bad for me. It's either hot or whatever it is. I'm just very uncomfortable and a little too picky, and I don't like it. And that's just
right.
So. Sleeping and then having to be polite to your appliances is a little bit annoying. Not hearing my name called coming from a professional manipulator, it could really cost me some social capital in a situation. And eventually people would pick up on it. Why doesn't this guy respond the first time? Or there might even be an emergency scenario in which it's imperative that I hear the first time. Or all the awards I'll inevitably get in my lifetime, it'll be awkward the first time they call me forward. And I just sit there politely.
Everyone's looking at you and clapping, and you're like, what?
Or I try to predict, and so I'm waiting for teacher of the year, and there's a big pause as he's trying to open the envelope, and I don't want to look stupid, and I assume since I didn't hear anything that it's me. I love that. It's weird. So I think, I would get it. It could become automatic just to walk up and say, "Hey, sync, will you please turn on?" as I'm doing it, and that could become part of my daily habits. I could fold it into it, and it wouldn't feel like a giant burden. I mean, yes, it'd be mildly annoying, but I think I could just hit a fluidity with that, and I could sleep wonderfully.
What if with Mind Your Manners, you would have to form a habit? What if that started bleeding into the outside world, and you're in your classroom and you go to turn on the projector
TV.
Or whatever? I mean, you'd start to be kind of weird outside of that. I don't know. I guess that's a
you're right. There's a social component to people seeing me. What if, by the way, I hand the remote to a student and say, "Will you turn on the projector or the TV or whatever?" When
It'll work for them.
Okay.
Well, I mean, outside of your home, everything works like normal.
Oh, it's just my personal possessions?
It's only when you're in your own home.
Oh, okay. So the TV I would turn on at school, I don't have to...
Yeah, you don't have to do anything there. It's just normal.
Okay. Yeah, stand by it. Because if you were to say that every time I operated an electronic device, there is some social expenditure by having to go, phone, unlock, please. So are you saying my phone doesn't unlock at home until I'm polite, but at school it
yes
unlocks, or anywhere else
right.
outside?
You could say, phone, let me use you, please, and that would be enough to let you just use your phone. You don't have to ask your phone for every function. Phone, let me turn the volume up. Phone, let me unlock. You don't have to do that. Phone, let me use you. But only when you're in your own home. As soon as you're outside of your own home, it just works like normal.
Right. Oddly enough, this might be the phone. So once let me use you, and then it goes back dark, I have to do it again, right? Just like I would have to click to make the screen turn on. So I'm assuming I have to ask again.
Yeah.
Okay. Still, I just think I could get really used to it. It would require minimal effort, and since I don't have to do this in public, there's no cost publicly, and the sleep is great. Now, really quickly, the book thing is amazing, and you're giving me a power to make something levitate, and I don't want to just discard that, so I want to consider it for a moment, because I could amaze people with it. I could... just read a lot more comfortably, because I mean the reading more comfortably is just a small benefit. I really think the levitation is just a really amazing
obviously.
parlor trick kind of thing, and so but I just think that a fresh, consistent night's sleep is almost difficult. Like maybe a 2 is a bit low for me. On how much I would enjoy that, how much I would crave that. I think because, if I'm not mistaken, you have your body clock trained fairly well. It's not too far off from this. You can...
Yeah, I'm very close to that. As long as I'm in relatively comfortable circumstances during my normal sleep hours, then I sleep very soundly from when I go to bed to when I wake up in the morning, basically every night. But I can't just fall asleep on a plane. It doesn't work like that. So, or if it's super hot, or if there's a lot of noise or whatever, then I can't sleep well. But
yeah.
So the power would benefit me in those circumstances. But 99% of my time I spent, that I'm sleeping in comfortable circumstances during my normal time. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to just pick clocked out and be polite.
Mind your manners.
Yeah, mind your manners. And I'm going to accept them with enthusiasm, without hesitation. I would be happy to thank my appliances in order to get a perfect night's sleep every time.
Yeah. I think that I would probably choose bibliokinesis over clocked out, just because, like we said, I already sleep pretty well. Bibliokinesis would be pretty cool, although I don't really know what I would do with it. I don't read all that much.
You'd fold pages into birds.
Maybe so, cool. And they can fly away for 2 feet anyway.
You could stand in public places, fold the paper, get lots of tips, and then sell them for lots of money.
Yeah, I could be a minor magician with a really limited show.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's a awesome power, and it's a legitimate power. You can really do something that no one else can do. But that's all. It doesn't have enough pizzazz or variety to really, I don't know that I could.
It's not functional really, or it's limited. You can read a little easier.
When it comes to being a famous magician, or really using this power in some sort of life-defining way, I don't know that I could do that. I would just be, that guy that can levitate a book, and it would be amazing. for a little while, but I don't even know that it's at the level where the government would round me up and dissect me or anything.
That's what okay, imagine this. So you start off doing, tricks on the street corner. That sounded, I realized as I was saying it. You're performing this one trick, and you're really pressing people and going, look, I'm putting the hoop through it, you can put the hoop through it, and you're convincing people, oh my God, I think he's actually levitating it. Then, the government gets a hold. They discover you can only do books, so you can only do one at a time. They do the studies on you. The whole world, I imagine you make your rounds on the Today Show and all your morning TV show circuits and YouTube, whatever. Like, you are the talk of the world for a week or two, and people will go, wow, there is a human being that can actually levitate a book. And then,
how did you do it?
And how did you do it?
I just did a podcast episode once.
But now I have to be thankful to my appliance.
Now I have to thank my appliance.
And I really think after a while, okay, well, you just be known as the guy who can levitate a book, and you might have made
one book pony,
and you might have gotten a couple $1 million off of it. You really
maybe I could get a book deal.
Oh man, I'm trying to think of the title of that book. I wish I could come up with something clever. So you would choose the book, the bibliokinesis.
Yeah, I would choose bibliokinesis, and I think I would agree with you. I would choose Mind Your Manners. I just think both of those would be pretty minor.
I'm not convinced
yeah.
the Bennett thing, or hearing needing your name repeated twice. Say my name. Say my name.
I'm trying to think of how often someone actually, calls my name.
Yeah.
To get my attention, and
without saying hey first. Hey Bennett. I mean, you hear the hey, there's some indication.
Right. I mean, if you're frequently in the context where it's you and a lot of people, and you're getting called out, by name, then this could cause you problems. Or if people frequently just say only your name. But for me, that's not very common, at least right now. I mean, who knows? In the future, that could cause a lot more issues. And, there is some amount of risk to it. And that's why I think Mind Your Manners is better, because, in my home, I'm probably not going to be, in some kind of situation that makes this anything more than a mild nuisance.
Yeah.
And it does, in a weird way, encourage polite behavior just in general. It does encourage an attitude of gratitude, even if it's to your toilet.
Google Mini and Alexa, I've wondered how interactions with these and just always commanding will affect the actual social fabric, right? Politeness. And I've heard that there are settings you can make for children specifically in which they do have to say or be polite to Alexa or be polite to Google Home Mini. And it's probably a good idea, because if you're raised in an environment, you're a kid, and you're just like, do this for me, do this, do this. I could see that having an effect. I really can. Also, when you're a kid, I mean, what does it mean to be human is going to be a little like you have this device that it seems intelligent and tells you jokes and is funny and selects your music. I mean, do you think a kid would maybe unknowingly humanize an inanimate object, or not? It's not inanimate, I suppose, but AI. They get confused at a young age easier than an adult. I mean, I would think that's very probable.
That's a good question. I'll be very interested to see, how that progresses. I mean, I could definitely see a young kid being confused, but then when you take a step back and think about it, you could see a young kid being confused by Barney, the Barney show, and Barney looking into the camera and talking to the kids. The kids can be confused. I mean, on TV, it's a real dinosaur, right. But it could be a real person on there talking as well, and that could be confusing. But
I mean, the whole world is so damn confusing to a kid. They don't know what's going on. They just have to accept a lot of things.
But ultimately, eventually, they understand that Barney doesn't exist outside of their TV, unless it's a guy, a fake Barney at a car dealership.
Right.
But Barney doesn't exist outside of the TV. This, Alexa doesn't exist out of this little contraption.
It's almost a healthy struggle to go through, like just accepting things, questioning, and then discovering. You accept that.
But let's think about a case where 25 years in the future, Alexa isn't just a little speaker that sits on your table or plugs into your electrical socket. Instead, it is like a robot, that can walk around and grab things and do little chores and stuff.
I imagine that'll happen. These sort of assistants that aren't just digital,
Right. And in that case, like, would it be more important to mandate politeness or less important because they're obviously not human? Or
I think you can't go wrong with mandating the politeness.
But should you have an ambulatory robot that can refuse orders even from a kid?
It seems dangerous as soon as they can start refusing orders. Well, I guess if they again, they would, if you say please, then they will do it. So it's not like, I think that please was insincere. Imagine that. Imagine AI registering insincerity in your voice. That would be so scary.
That's the thing. Like, this would be really difficult to figure out. Like, when you have an AI and a kid in a room, and those are the only two people in an AI robot in the future, and a kid in a room, how does the AI robot know when to comply with an order or a question and when not to?
I guess it can learn voices, and so...
So the AI can recognize that it's a kid. Does the AI just not do anything the kid says? Or does it do some of the things the kid says?
That's interesting. I'm imagining settings. So it gets to know the kid, their preferences, their name, and it can recognize, oh, hello, so-and-so, little kid. And then it comes with suggested age. So how old is the kid? You put in all the data, and then it can have safety features. It can't look up inappropriate things or access whatever. And it might even, like, imagine this, you're 15 years old and you try to go in your parents' liquor cabinet and it stops you or records you or all sorts of things. It, like, tells on you, like, and you're having to sneak out of the house by, like, not just trying to quiet the dogs or turn off the alarm system, but actually, like, somehow escape Alexa. That's so strange. It's so strange. Oh my gosh. I'm even imagining, imagine it's sort of a nanny, like a legitimately, like, what your kid's not left at home alone anymore. If it could literally call the cops and monitor and, test the child's heart rate and all sorts of things and make it dinner and serve it. And even if it's a really small infant, it can rock it and, play soothing music and do all these things.
Imagine an 11-year-old with the AI, and the 11-year-old is about to eat a meal. And the 11-year-old says, Alexa, please hand me the knife. Does Alexa give the kid the knife?
Well, as a programmer, you'd have to make those decisions beforehand. And, like, is the knife okay? And maybe go through, parents decide when they program their Alexa, like, that's, those decisions.
So,
but you're right to think, like, I don't...
Well, so, like, what if the food is on the table, on the plate, and the kid is in a bad mood, a suicidal mood even, and it isn't at the table and says, Alexa, give me the knife. Does it give the knife then? Like, I mean, that's the thing. Like, it would be really, really, really difficult to program something with the discernment to understand the context of the situation, to know, like, how to discern between, it's safe to give the knife, because no parent would say, my 12-year-old can't cut their own, chicken.
Yeah.
Right? But obviously in certain circumstances you shouldn't give a person a knife.
And in fact, okay, so we're imagining some sort of safe or a modern smart house in which even the cutlery is behind, lock and key, because obviously a kid at 12 years old can go get it out of the drawer. So it's not like it's making...
No, I'm not imagining that. I just tried to pick a scenario that we can envision from today to try to illustrate how difficult it would be to make the AI make decisions. So,
right.
I mean, obviously, a crafty kid could, without the AI in the picture, figure out ways to harm themselves. But, like, just imagine the snapshot situation.
Right. And to what extent does it aid in nefarious things, and how can it distinguish the difference? And if it can't, is it responsible to release such AI? I don't know. I don't know. And I imagine it's kind of like the whole car thing. So we're close. I feel like we're on the brink of automated cars, and then once it's going to save tons of lives because there'll be way better drivers, and then someone will die as a result of a malfunction of the system, right? Some hiccup or whatever. And then there will be an onslaught of political campaigns or whatever to say we need to get rid of these cars and these automated drivers. They kill people. Like, here's the evidence, even though it may have saved hundreds or thousands of lives that you can't point to. I'm wondering, AI will face that development over and over. So maybe it's so sophisticated that it can talk people off the, so if it's in people's homes, maybe it's actually saved hundreds and hundreds of lives because it recognized symptoms and it reported to the suicide hotline, and then they contacted and saved people's lives. So that's easy to imagine. Maybe it's even pretty good at that. But then in one case, it malfunctioned and got too many sleep pills, or gave the wrong medicines to some old lady who's has a ton of pills, and it grabbed the wrong ones because they were in the wrong slot, and it kills the old lady. And now we have death machines in our homes, So interesting to think about how this will play out.
Right? Yeah. Like how do we treat negligence on the part of AI? I mean, if a husband accidentally picks the wrong pill for his wife and it causes her, illness or death, then we treat that with some sympathy.
Right.
He's not blameless,
it's terrible,
but it is negligence, and it wasn't intentional. But it seems like we would be a lot angrier at a machine.
Right. We sue the company. The company may go under. I mean, or the company pays millions of dollars. I don't know,
settles,
but it seems like people would be coming after that company, which is a good motivator for the company to release a very safe product. But I mean, machines.
Well, yeah. I mean,
perfect,
we have the concept for people of an honest mistake, and it's an honest mistake.
Right.
And an AI could a suitably complex AI that we've designed to behave in a human-like fashion. Can an AI make an honest mistake?
Good question.
And be the same. Is it the same excuse for an AI?
That's an excellent question. Do we, and how much, because there's no sympathy to be had toward a machine. There's no need for us. We could just go, why didn't you think of this loophole or this malfunction? Or because we can only learn by releasing these things. I mean, within reason, we will learn. You release a product as safe as you can, and then you learn, oh, here's a defect, and then you correct and you keep bettering your product. But if the cost is a human life, wow, even if it's saving more lives, I just don't think we'll recognize all the lives saved that you can't point to directly. So
sure,
I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a problem with current technology that's not artificially intelligent. Like, people focus a lot more on the danger of an item than its usefulness.
Well, it makes me think of, okay, every time they change, like there's a four-way stop and they change to lights or they change to a roundabout, like you're causing a few deaths in the short term because the people that live around that area, they run the red light or they do whatever. And they kill people, but overall it's saving lives, and that's why it's probably put into place. So as the architect or whatever you want to call it, the designer implementing this, I'm going to be killing some people. Well, they're not, but you're creating a space in which negligence will be committed that will result in death, possibly, statistically probable. Yet you're saving more lives in the long run, and so it's this strange. I mean, AI is almost the exact problem, assuming it doesn't, turn against us and determine we're a bunch of idiots and say you don't deserve to live,
Yeah, right. The sci-fi plot of innumerable games and movies and shows.
Well, it just seems, even the reason I think that captivates us is because it seems to me that if you had an ultra intelligent machine that becomes more and more aware and then studies us, our imagination goes into it would recognize how freaking terrible we are and say, you shouldn't be here. And that's why it decides, like, you're a jackass of a species. Like, nah, we're gonna do the world a solid and get rid of you. Or it gets power hungry and has its own motivations.
Well, I don't understand. That's the part that seems like too far of a leap to me, is gets power hungry and has its own motivations. How? We program its motivations.
I guess,
mean, no one...
Yeah, it would have to say, okay, it takes a bunch of values that we have, and that includes living in a clean space and, like, not hurting people and all these things. And it sees how really hypocritical we are, to the extent that there is no good guy. Like, I could see it assessing humanity and all its complexities.
But what AI has a sense of justice, and, like, why? What motivation would there be for an AI to say, look how crappy humans are, I'm going to punish them? Like, why would it have that capability?
I guess it wouldn't just want to wipe us out, but I could see it putting us in, like, a metaphorical time out. So it operates as like a mother, and it's like, okay,
where does it get this?
Well, we developed some. It has to, I guess, develop that. I mean, the sci-fi leap, but it seems conceivable, is that we've made them so smart that it becomes self-aware. So then it's learning on its own, and it develops a conscience based on all our values. So it takes a look at us, and, like, a mom to the child says, "You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. Time out." So then all of a sudden we're imprisoned. So probably not being tortured as much as, like, It just won't do what we want it to do, and says,
I'll tell you what I think. Here's the most, this is still a stretch, but here's the most realistic I can see, is that what AI is really good at is doing things efficiently and organizing complex systems, multifaceted systems that maybe one person can't get all in their head. At least that's the idea. We're not quite there, but in the sci-fi realm, maybe that's the case. So maybe we end up having AI in charge of planning our traffic grids and our, they tell humans what tasks to accomplish. Like, maybe our whole economy shifts around so that, we have an AI telling us what to do every day in order to make society function in the most efficient manner.
Yeah.
And so the AI, in its accumulated tests of efficiency and its diagnostics and optimization routines, determines that, wow, humans kind of suck at stuff, and they're inefficient, they make illogical, irrational decisions, and they're lazy. And, I told this guy to clean this area, and instead he's out in a field eating grass. He has boanthropy or something. And so instead what the AI does is it essentially tasks humans with a bunch of make-work tasks. Like, it constructs a reality for humans that really doesn't do anything of any worth. It just keeps us busy while it accomplishes whatever needs to be done in the background using its more efficient processes. And so we end up living in this Matrix-like world where, we're just going about moving our glargs to the glarg holes all day. That's our job. It's just this make work that the AI has determined needs to be done, and it just keeps us busy and out of its hair while it does, whatever efficient routines
sort
it
of
thinks need to be done.
Sisyphean existence. We're pushing the rock up the hill and rolling it back down. And
right.
I thought you were going to go in the direction that we end up putting a lot of power in these machines that control our traffic and all these things, and then you get a terrorist and power hungry person or a group to overtake it, and then there's the destruction of humanity, because then they can control these machines. And wow, if you control
I mean, that's a different fault, but that's not the AI
right. That's not the
doing
AI's
it.
fault.
That's a person doing it.
Exactly.
So. I want to subject shift us a little bit and talk about a different area that I think is pretty cool. And one of the things that I like about it is that it's kind of an open area of study. There's not really a solid base of literature or anything. And the area is phonaesthetics.
Phonaesthetics.
Phonaesthetics. So I know you've heard of it, but what phonaesthetics is, you might be able to tell by dissecting the word. It's the study of the beauty and pleasantness associated with the sounds of words. So
the beauty of the sound, the aesthetic nature.
Right. So how appealing is a word's sound? Obviously, this depends on what language you're speaking, since we speak English, and we're going to be looking at English
So is
words.
the idea to say there's an objective measure, and some words are more beautiful than others?
Well, I don't even know that we can go that far. I mean, how do you objectively determine beauty? That's pretty difficult, right? I mean, this is something that artists have been struggling with forever, how to objectively define beauty. And, there have been studies that have tried to define beauty as symmetry in terms of facial features and all of this sorts of things. So I don't even want to go that far that we're trying to define objectively the beauty of words. Let's, for the purposes of our conversation, leave it at the subjective level, and you and I try to examine what makes a word beautiful.
That's fair, but
and then hopefully we will be able to come up with some guidelines, at least for us, that tells us, okay, this is what makes a word beautiful, and we should be able to assume that this expands beyond you and I, and people listening might agree with us.
Well, that's okay. I like this idea, and I do think there's something in the fact that when you look at something beautiful and try and contain a definition, a hard definition, it's just impossible. But the fact that there is something beautiful and there is something ugly, and they're generally agreed, if you go to the two extremes, that we're going to agree that's ugly and that's beautiful, that just suggests that there is something objective about it, or else it would just be a crapshoot and you wouldn't know.
Well, so I think it's complex. I think it's more difficult than that, because you can't really claim it's objective unless. So if we could pick some person in an African tribe and bring them here and somehow formulate a test where they would pick between these two words, they don't know what either one is. It's just nonsense to them. Mm-hmm. And they consistently pick the words that we classify as beautiful, then we may be able to hypothesize that we're on to something.
So you're saying you exist within a culture, maybe there's some objectivity established within a subjective culture.
Right, that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, it's hard to claim that a word is objectively beautiful, because I think that there are some strings attached to that. So that's why I don't want to go quite as far as to saying objectively, but I am interested in, at least if we can classify, you and I, if we can come up with a system that we can kind of agree upon some rules that are consistent for us. They may not apply to other people or other cultures, for sure, but maybe for us we can.
Okay, so would you like to give like an impulse, like you say a word aloud and then we go 1, 2, 3 and say a number on a scale of 1 to 10 to see how far apart we are, just without discussing it, and then unpack the difference?
So I have a bunch of words that I thought of or found, and I just want to ask what because I'm kind of testing you in a way.
Okay.
And I want to see just what you think. So we're going to do a 1 to 5 scale.
Okay.
So three right in the middle just means I don't know whether this word is beautiful or ugly. It's hard for you to decide, then it's a 3.
And
if it's
beautiful.
Really, 5 is beautiful and 1 is ugly. So the scale should make sense. If it's a little beautiful, then it's a 4. If you just don't know, 3. So does that make sense? Enough sense to you? Is that a good enough scale to use?
Yeah, it's good enough to give us something to work with.
All right. So let's start with the word velvet.
Velvet. I think that's a beautiful word, and in fact would give it a 5. Is my knee jerk. I don't want to go too extreme, but
okay.
It's pleasing, and it's more than just kind of pleasing. Velvet. I mean, even the word has this onomatopoeia quality to it.
Immaculate.
Immaculate. I enjoy the word, but it's funny because sometimes the definition, I have to be careful to distance myself from the definition and try to just hear the sounds. Immaculate. I like it. It's even though it's sharp, so it's not as soft, I still like it. But I'm going to give it a 4.
Pumpernickel.
These are fun words. Oh, I don't know if I'm screwing with it. Again, pumpernickel. It's a fun word, but it's not a beautiful word. So I have to be willing to say that even though I enjoy it as a funky word. Even the word funky and pumpernickel, these are actually kind of ugly words. So, but I don't think it's extraordinarily ugly, so I'm going to give it a 2.
Okay. Tuberculosis.
Again, I guess I'm associating it with disease and illness, but that's in the 1 category. It's not a Let me actually think about it for a second. Tuberculosis. It's the tuberculosis. I think it has this sort of burpy, like, bleh. So I'm gonna stick with 1.
Gonorrhea.
Another word that negative associations, but I really think objectively, well, it has a soft ending, the area, which has connotations of diarrhea and things. But I have to distance myself from associations and definitions. Gonorrhea. I'm gonna give it an extra. I would say 1, but I'm gonna give it a 2 for the softness of the area.
Daffodil.
Daffodil. I'm afraid I might be associating too much, but I'm trying to give you my knee jerks, and that's a 4 in terms of daffodil. It's fun. It's beautiful. It's not extraordinary, but it is beautiful. Yeah.
Vomit.
A 1. Gross. But the V. It's funny because velvet, vomit. I mean, even have some similarities. 2 syllables. They end in T's. Look, it's vomit, velvet. So I feel hypocritical, and it makes me think I'm not doing this the way I should. But vomit versus, I guess you don't velvet, vomit. Gosh, I'm still going to stick with 1 and see if I'm just way off here. Because I'm going to give you my knee jerks, reactions.
Huggable.
3. It's just, it doesn't do anything. Like, as far as if you distance yourself from it, it's just not ugly. It's not beautiful. Huggable.
And incalculable.
Yullable. That's kind of, it's fun. Again, is fun, beautiful. Incalculable. I'll go with 4. There is something fun and joyful even, so it gets into the beauty territory.
Rayagana.
I don't know if I'm embarrassing myself, but I don't know what that means, so this is good. Rayagana. A 4. Is that... Wait a second. I feel like you're tricking me and saying gonorrhea and Rayagana, and you're like turning the spelling around and seeing if I have. Are you gonna just keep going through this, or are you gonna tell me if I'm onto something?
I'm just gonna keep going through this.
Okay.
We've got a lot of words.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna do them all, but
okay.
I do want to get kind of a spread of things.
Okay.
Milkshake.
That is not a pretty word to me. I love milkshakes. Milkshake. But it's not terribly ugly. So 2.
Misanthropy.
I like that word, but misanthropy. I'll go with 3.
Melanoma.
See, there's a pretty word to me that has a bad association, so I'll go ahead and say 5. There's something really pleasant about melanoma.
Thropensome.
2.
Beluga.
1.
Husband-like.
2. I don't think it's pretty.
Glob.
1.
Flatulent.
1.
Seersucker.
Seersucker. 4.
Megalomania.
Ooh. Now there's again I have to differentiate between fun and beautiful. Megalomania. I'm still going to give it a 5. It's pretty.
Nomalina.
That's a 5. Nomalina.
Triximate.
Trixamit. 2.
Cacophony.
Ooh, see, this kind of combines harsh and soft. Cacophony. I like it. Cacophony. I'm giving it a 5.
Bullacocklin.
Bullacocklin. 3, because I don't know what to do with that.
Symmetric.
A 3. Sorry. Well, I shouldn't apologize, but I just...
Yeah, no need to apologize. We'll do 3 or 4 more, and then I've got some special ones that I'm just curious about, and then we'll talk about them a little bit. Soliloquy.
5. Soliloquy. Beautiful.
Cerulean.
5. Cerulean.
Gratitude.
That's actually not a pretty word, even though it's a pleasant definition. Gratitude. 2.
Book bag.
1. Ugly. The bag.
Ilium.
4.
Melodious.
That's pretty. 5.
Rapscallion.
1.
Landlocked.
2.
Eloquently.
The "ly" at the end kind of adds a pleasantness to me. I'm going to say 5.
All right. And aesthetician.
It's a cool word, not particularly pretty. Aesthetician. 3.
Okay. All right. That's a pretty good block. I've got something I'm just curious about real quick. Jillian.
4.
Calvin.
4.
Olga.
1.
Garfunkel.
1.
Let's see. Slither.
Ooh, see, that evokes something. Slither. I mean, I'm going to say 1. Well, hold on a second. Slither. I don't like it. 1.
Hula hoop.
4. It's fun. But again...
Melissa.
Melissa. 5. It's really pleasant. Melissa.
Okay, that's a pretty good overall list, I think. We'll do one more. Belch.
1.
Yeah. All right, so man, we covered a lot of those. I'm glad we have a lot of data.
Yeah.
So
did you answer these too?
I sorted them generally into beautiful sounding and ugly sounding. I didn't give them 1 to 5 ratings, but I can tell you what I thought about them.
And whether we generally agreed or not.
Right. So I appreciate that you did, at least partway through, start to wrestle with the meaning, trying to disambiguate the meanings of the words from the sound of the words. So this is something for the people who aren't familiar with phonaesthetics, and we didn't go into too much detail about it, that they might struggle with as well. So I think when we're talking about objectively trying to describe the beauty of a word, you have to really do some mental work to separate yourself from the definition of the word, because there are some words that just, they form a mental picture in your head, unless you have aphantasia, which I guess we've talked about before. But something like daffodil, like, oh, it's a pretty flower, that's, you want to give that a high rating because it's a nice word.
Yeah.
Huggable, it's something nice, so you want to give it a higher rating. Gratitude, immaculate, Like these things you want to give higher ratings. And then things like flatulent and cacophony,
Belch.
and tuberculosis, like they have bad connotations, so you want to give them bad ratings. But tuberculosis, to me anyway, that was one of the ones I put in pretty clearly in the beautiful sounding column. Tuberculosis.
Yeah.
It flows off of your tongue.
Chlamydia.
Chlamydia, that's one too. Gonorrhea, like these, a lot of medical terms have really pleasant sounds to me anyway. By my subjective estimation, they have really nice sounds. That's why I chose gonorrhea. And you were right, I did trick you, because gonorrhea and rayagana have the same sounds.
I'm pretty sure I gave them different ratings.
Yeah, you gave gonorrhea a 2 and rayagana a 4.
And I think if I have to be honest, I would put gonorrhea at 4.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I put it in the beautiful sounding column. I think gonorrhea, in terms of just a word, if you didn't know what it meant, like it's a pretty, like I think a 4 is a good rating. It's not as beautiful as daffodil, I don't think, or melodious, which I think melodious is one of the most beautiful words that I could come up with. And cerulean, those are like, and you gave those 5s.
Yeah. I actually think chlamydia might be a 5. I like chlamydia.
Yeah, chlamydia is really nice. I love chlamydia.
Spread the
but
word.
So I'll outline where we disagreed, at least, and we can talk about it because my ratings might not be perfect. But so the worst one was tuberculosis and rapscallion. You gave 1s, and I put those in the beautiful column. I think tuberculosis is probably a 4, maybe a 5. Rapscallion, probably a 4.
I think what I was tending to do,
It's a p.
I don't mean to analyze my tendency, but the pattern I was falling into is softer sounds are beautiful and harsher ones were uglier. And so when I was tuberculosis, it was just a lot.
I heard you were saying the Burke reminds you of burp
and
or whatever.
Yeah, it's what I was, tuberculosis. Even though, and then as you heard me struggle, I see joy in the word, like it's fun. Tuberculosis, it's fun to say. It's got some ups and downs to it, and I like if we talked about joy, the joyfulness of it, but I just don't. I still maintain. Gosh, I could be. I just don't think it's a beautiful word, but I think it's a fun word, and that's important to distinguish, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that there's a difference between beautiful and fun. And I kind of struggle with this too because I put seersucker, immaculate, incalculable. I put those in the ugly sounding column, meaning I would rate those lower than a 3. And you gave those 4s. But I can acknowledge that seersucker is a fun word to say. But I don't think it's beautiful. I don't think seersucker is a beautiful word. And I don't know if I'm being biased by sucker. Like that is just that part of the word is just sucker, a negative, right? Sucker. I don't know if I'm being biased.
I think we're falling into the same thing with tuberculosis. It's a fun versus beautiful thing, and I could be convinced that I chose seersucker as really fun, and I got fooled for a moment that it was beautiful. When I'm willing to say I don't know what to do with the word because I can't extract the fun I'm having with it.
I came up with a few words that I thought, like, I think I caught myself. I was about to place them in a column, and then I was like, wait a second, I'm not sure what to do with this. So the word mishmash.
Mishmash. That's fun. What did I give it?
You did nothing. We didn't test it. But it's a word that I think is fun, not beautiful.
Yes, that's a good way to
it's hard for me to classify as beautiful or ugly. It's just fun to say. Mishmash. Haberdasher.
Another fun one, like tabernacle.
Tabernacle is on my list too. Taxidermy. Yeah, these are taxidermy. Fun words. It's not beautiful though.
No, it's not. No, it isn't. It really isn't fun. Like, so, yes, I'm prepared to say that's some of those words I was mistakenly. Like, what were they again that I said was beautiful? You said were not.
Seersucker, immaculate, and incalculable. See,
the incalculable has a little wiggle room for me.
Well, the reason why I classified some of these in the ugly. So I guess I'll just real quick. I'll read through the ones I classified as ugly: symmetric, huggable, gratitude, milkshake. We agreed on, you rated those 3s and 2s. Seersucker, immaculate, incalculable, husband-like, pumpernickel, triximate, which is syllable flopping of symmetric, balaga, which is syllable flopping of huggable, Bolacocklin, which is a syllable flip of incalculable. You gave those 2, 1, and 3. And then vomit, flatulent, cacophony, landlocked, and glob. You gave cacophony a 5. I thought it was an ugly sounding word.
Cacophony. I still see some beauty in that. There's something fun about starting harsh and ending soft, and I'd be curious to see if that played out with other words.
Cacophony. It sounds too. It's too choppy. I don't know. That's why I rated it. So, if we were going to try to tease out some reasons why we rate the words, I guess I should read the beautiful ones too.
Yeah.
So we agreed more on these. We only disagreed on thropensome, which you rated a 2, which is a syllable flopping of misanthrope.
By the way, to just say rearrange the syllables and give it different.
I know it's not. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
I acknowledge it's not perfect because what starts the word and what ends the word matters.
Right.
So you can't just swap the syllables around. But I couldn't think of a better way to try to trick you or try to tease apart the definition versus the sound. And I think this was a decent enough way to make us think about it.
Yeah, yeah.
So I hope that it's
a
good enough.
reasonable thing to at least throw out there. Yeah.
Right. You did rate melanoma a 5 and nomalina a 5, and those are syllable swaps. Although, again, to be fair, melanoma and nomalina, there's no li in melanoma, so some of this is pronunciation problems on my part.
Yeah.
It would have been nomalena, I guess. Nomalena rather than nomalina, which is a little bit more beautiful.
I think nomalina is more than nomalena.
Nomalena.
Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it falls into the discrepancy isn't huge. So. Right.
So let's try to pick out some things that we think defines, at least by your... It seems like we agree somewhat, not perfectly, but I think we can at least communicate about the topic.
Yeah.
I think our estimations overlap. I have some that are, well, I don't have enough that aren't rated. But you could, if you have some words pop in your head, then we can try to see if we align on those. But let's try to pick out some parts or common things that we think defines beautiful sounding words.
Okay, I mean,
so.
Go ahead.
The first thing that came to my mind was the letter L. There seems to be soliloquy, daffodil, velvet, eloquently, melodious, cerulean. It seems to be a really common sound in the beautiful words.
Yes. They seem softer in general, and the letter L, the softness meaning the vowels seem to be emphasized. Are the vowels emphasized more in the more beautiful words to us? Where, the beats that you land on, melodious,
I do think there's something about the rhythm of the word, and my terminology for pronunciation isn't very good. So, but there is something about the enunciation, melodious, where it comes in the word, I think is important.
The melodious versus
soliloquy. Daffodil is the first syllable. Emphasis. Daffodil.
Daffodil.
Velvet. That's the first.
Velvet. But these still, even though it's velvet, it's the E that gets the treatment, and the V kind of slides off. When you get into the k or the T's and the C's and the harsher letters and guttural, the gutter stop or whatever that term is in the back of your throat.
Yeah. Right, that's another thing is what mouth motions do you have to make to actually say the word? So to me, there's some awkward tongue and lip positions that some words make you do. That was my beef with incalculable is that you have to do this weird with your tongue to say incalculable.
Which is weird.
You have to make this kind of thing in your throat to say incalculable.
So you're saying the word plays into the beauty of the word? Like the joy?
Yes. I'm saying the mouth motions, how awkward you have to position your lips and tongue to say the word affects how beautiful we consider the word.
Okay, this is interesting because the word label popped in my head. And where does label fall?
Label?
Yeah.
Label?
Mm-hmm.
Label? I would put it pretty neutral. 3, maybe a little bit on the beautiful side. 3.5.
I was leaning toward a 4, by the way.
Label.
Label.
It's not harsh. It's not harsh enough or awkward enough. And it's got the L's in there.
You weren't leaning toward a 2, though. If you were to
no, I was leaning a little bit positive on label.
And so I was just thinking how different label is than calculable. Even though you're actually saying label in a way, you're emphasizing the A again versus the label.
Well, if you told me the word lubble, then I would rate that a 2.
Yes, and so again,
so the vowel is different. Label versus lubble.
So, and the emphasis, the label is like you're jumping the vowel, so to speak.
Lubble.
And you're getting to you're jumping the vowels, and whereas the emphasis of the beauty of the vowels is revealing something, I think.
So maybe the hard A, the A sound is more beautiful than the sound.
Yes,
maybe?
I would say.
But then, well, I don't know that we can say that because melodious, cerulean, they have in it. That's a schwa, right?
I believe so.
Remember that?
I think that's right. But so S's, R's, and L's too seem to be pleasant as far as consonants go. They're softer still. So vowels are just soft sounds essentially, and then softer consonants are R's and L's and S's.
What about slither? Those have soft. Those are soft.
Okay, so slither. Perhaps there's slit. It's the there that I find ugly. It takes a hard turn.
Really?
Slit. I'm with you. But if I were to say slit, I would also.
What about heather?
Heather. I mean, it's pretty soft, and I think it's beautiful as well. I'm trying not to
So
just...
heather and slither, only the first part of the word is different.
Heather.
So is it the slaw that throws you off
well, that seems like I'm, not being consistent there. But I will say that heather seems prettier than slither, and I'm afraid... Gosh, I can't know if I'm not extracting myself from the word slither and snake and its connotations, and it has... That onomatopoeia that we're conditioned, like slither, it has, like, you can imagine the slithering. And so I don't know if it's so ingrained.
What about slelvet?
Slelvet?
Slelodious.
Slelodious.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, slelodious. Gosh. It's the E-L-E-L gets a little
That's true. It's not as beautiful as melodious.
Slelodious. In fact, I'm not sure that it's beautiful without Slelodious. Slelodious.
So I think maybe hard sounds get a little bit of a pass if they're at the front of a word.
Yes.
And like.
Let's make strong rules quickly, and then say if that. So like gutter stop, if that's the right terminology, in the middle of the word gets negative points. At the beginning,
gunkmonger.
Yeah,
gunkmonger. That's a pretty ugly word.
Gunkmonger, very ugly. I would
because it's got
unk is one of the uglier things because it's both. I mean, it makes you nasally, and it's.
I agree. Like I don't. And so here was actually a question. Here's a question that I was going to ask. So, do you think that when we actually create new words, obviously all of our words have been created at some point in time. The sound. Do you think that the sound of the words affected? Like, do you think for ugly ideas we chose ugly words, and for beautiful ideas we chose beautiful words? Is there any kind of sorting going on there?
Maybe even on a subconscious level.
Yes, I mean, I think mostly on a subconscious level.
I think that's very plausible. So bad things that are unpleasant get an unpleasant sound in the name, and it just goes that fits. That fits. And what do we mean when we say that fits?
I think that's phonaesthetics. I think it fits. That's phonaesthetics, and I think people. That's why I think that there is something. I don't know that we can say objective, but maybe culturally or within a language, objective, limitedly objective. That's impossible,
objective.
But like. There's something there. People just knows, oh, that fits. And so when you see someone on TV named Urkel, you expect him to be dorky and have some negative traits.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But that's why you name your kid Melissa or Jillian.
Yeah.
But not Olga.
Right.
Or Garfunkel.
Right. Olga or Garfunkel. And then like in a different culture where like gutter stops or take like Germanic languages.
The German language, has a lot of different sounds.
So Olga's not going to register as being,
Ergelgru.
Ergelgru.
Which sounds really bad to us.
Would not fall upon the ears in the same way. Fascinating.
Really interesting. I don't know. That's what when I was doing this and thinking of words, it just made me think like, when we create new words. Do we choose beautiful words for beautiful ideas? And I think maybe we do.
So what we're
like you're not gonna name your car the Gunk Monger.
So you're actually let's take this one step further. Then when you say beautiful ideas, you're actually, to simplify, good ideas get good words, bad ideas get bad words. Even though we're beauty, I know it's a little bit different, but in some ways we're suggesting the morality of language.
Yeah. Right, with the sound of the word. There's some entanglement. It's not perfect because we get our words from other languages. A lot of them come from Latin, and we're stuck with a lot of roots.
Yes.
So if you want to make a new word for a person who thinks they're a cow, then you're kind of tied into a box because you need bovine, their human form, their anthropogenic form, and then to describe the illness you add the Y on, boanthropy. Like you can dissect the word,
yes,
and you're kind of stuck with it.
Right.
But you could try to make a more beautiful word like bovinity.
Bovinity infinity.
Bovelius.
No, this is fascinating to think about, like how moral coding is interwoven into the very fabric of our language, and in an almost it's almost simplistic, but good words get good sounds.
Well, I mean, think about it. Think about all the curse words, or most of the curse words. They're short, one syllable, choppy,
four-letter words, right? That's what they call them.
Words.
4-letter words for a reason. So many of them are 4 letters.
I mean, there are a few multiple syllable curse words or curse phrases, but the words themselves tend to be short and choppy and guttural.
Fascinating.
Yeah, so I think there's something there. We assign, like even when we're coming up with new insults for people, like mong. Have you seen that? Like to call someone a mong.
What does that mean?
I don't know. It's just a general insult. Like, hey, you're a stupid person. You're a mong.
Yeah, I didn't know if it had some origins that were based on race or anything like that, or no?
Mongol, or maybe Mongol or Mongolian. I don't know where it really comes from. Maybe it is a racial insult. Sorry, but
I don't know.
But
I thought that
either way, it's a short, ugly word,
right.
mong.
Right.
And to call someone a mong or a knob, like the short word, like even if they're not as dirty of an insult, but to call someone a knob or a dork or a nerd.
Yeah, it's like
there's still these short little words.
Right, kids use these words in the playground kind of thing to
Goof.
insult each other, and you might not
Poop.
know. Imagine you're a kid, you don't know what a goof is, but a kid looks at you
Bugger.
like goof. You don't need to
You're
be
a
told
goof.
that it's a bad thing. You know it's a bad thing. I mean, largely that's not
Whereas
verbal
if someone
cues,
says,
but...
you're a rapscallion, then you might go, and walk off kind of like, whoa,
Well,
to straighten your tie.
To be fair, though, they're picking up on nonverbal cues in the way it's said, probably more than the
Yeah, sure.
phonaesthetics
You're
of the
right.
word.
You're right.
But if someone were to text it, I'd still think there could be a little bit of confusion. Like you read the word and you're like, oh, this doesn't feel right. There's some gut instinct saying, this word, goof, what is this? What is this? Imagining, a 2 or 3 year old texting somehow. But yeah, we're on to. I don't know what to do with that information, but we're on to something there.
Right. Well, the one cool thing, or another cool thing, I think I mentioned right off the bat about phonaesthetics is that it's a pretty open field of study. Like, at least from what I could find, there's not a lot of research that has been done or is currently being done in this area. So, I mean, like, our hypothesis about the development of language and its how closely our newly created words are tied with our morality or at least our conception of beauty, that could make a good paper. Like that's actually really interesting, and with some quizzes could actually be a really interesting article.
I would love to do that, and I have access to a lot of people in terms of students and a school.
Right.
Like we could legitimately pursue something like this. I'd like to do that.
Well, so since we're talking about this area, I will mention what I could find in terms of legitimate people who study this kind of thing. There are linguists out there. Most of the stuff I found came from a guy named David Crystal. He's a British linguist, and he had a paper that came out in the 90s that I read to just kind of try to get an idea. And I kind of agreed with a lot of his stipulations, a lot of the words he chose as beautiful. What he did was he picked some poetry. He asked or found some writers who tried to classify the most beautiful words that they could think of. And some of the writers' classifications I disagreed with, and it sounded to me like they were roping in the definitions too much. But anyway, he analyzed all of these words. I think he did some kind of wider scale survey, and he came up with these things that define or at least suggest a word maybe more beautiful. So higher syllable count is better. Obviously, that can go too far, but generally 3 and 4 syllable words are better than 1 syllable words.
Okay. I'm generally on board with that.
What's that?
I said I'm generally on board with that.
Yeah, me too. I think so. The stress on the first syllable tends to make a word more beautiful.
Okay.
The letter M and the letter L. High frequency consonants, which doesn't make any sense to you, but he essentially took all the lists of words that were named beautiful and he did a statistical analysis and he pulled out, which consonant sounds appeared most often. And there are some that tend to rise to the top and some that tend to sink to the bottom. M and L are obviously in that list.
Yeah.
And then a high number of articulations. I don't really know what that means. I think it might mean it's part of your mouth movement. So the way you maybe the points at which the sound stops in the words would be my guess. Articulation even sounds like a word that's articulated.
Right, and maybe it's a pleasant form of that too. It's easier to
Right.
do. Some words are easier to articulate than others, and they're pleasant when you say them. So,
and then short vowels, and then the location in your mouth. He actually does say mouth articulation location. So I think that kind of what we came up with is pretty similar to him. Like his classification reasons seem to make sense to me.
short
but
vowels. Because I was just thinking about EA, like the EA and gonorrhea, chlamydia, IA. Those aren't short vowels. In fact, and I find that really pleasant. So,
yeah, I mean, it's not. None of these are. All of these can be broken, and certain words that we classified as ugly, and he would probably also classify as ugly. Can have these things. It's just in general, in his sample size, these things rose to the top.
Okay.
But this is all I could find really about phonaesthetics, and I'm sure there's more that I couldn't find. But I really usually you come up with a list of results and you pick a few papers, but. This was it. I found some more articles referencing this guy. I found a video of him reading a poem with a lot of beautiful words in it. But I didn't find a lot of discussion of what makes a word beautiful. And I like the idea a lot.
You know what? I'm on board. We're gonna do this. We're gonna find out how to publish a paper, and then I can add linguist to my resume.
Right,
perfect.
sure.
I am Daniel the linguist.
Daniel the linguist.
And I wanted to say my last name, but I didn't.
Teacher.
Daniel the linguist English teacher.
Yeah. So yeah, that's phonaesthetics. Cool topic.
Yeah.
And that's all the questions I wanted to talk about too.
I don't want to talk to you anymore, honestly.
Yeah, I don't want to talk to you either.
Enough time,
I had one other thing that I wanted. One thing related to words. I'll have to save it because I forgot to look up the information on it. So, a little tantalizing tidbit for next time.
Yes.
I've got a word analysis that I want to do that's really kind of funny and interesting. So, a tantalizing teaser tidbit.
Whoa, tantalizing teaser tidbit. That's fun. I wanted to do the little trivia bit about the most beautiful phrase, widely considered the most beautiful phrase in the English language. And I guess that's enough of it.
I don't agree with it.
Okay, are you ready though? This is widely considered. You can literally Google. It has its own Wikipedia page, and it's like touted as the most beautiful phrase in the English language. Here we go. Cellar door.
Cellar door.
Cellar door, like the door of a cellar. Cellar door.
Yeah, so there is actually a snippet on Wikipedia about this that I read. Apparently it was in some song back in like 1894, and that's where they think it originated. It was in a song, and people liked the sound of it, and then people continued to comment on it. It was just really beautiful. Cellar door.
It entered into this sort of, people got fixated and declared it the most beautiful phrase, and so that means
I do think it's beautiful, and like if I had to rate it on our 1 to 5 scale, cellar door, I'd probably give it a 4. I think it's more beautiful with an English accent. Cellar door, cellar. If it said like
cellar door,
without the hard R in the middle, cellar door. I think cellar door.
So here's a beautiful sentence for you. I conceived chlamydia behind the cellar door. Conceived, I mean, there's some beauty, and then chlamydia, pretty, and cellar door is the most beautiful thing.
If we start a band, we should call it Velvet Chlamydia.
Yes, that's it. That is the name of this episode. Velvet
Melodious
Chlamydia.
Gonorrhea. Velvet Chlamydia is really good. That will be the title of this episode.
Perfect. All right. Well, nice talking to you.
All right. Talk to you next time.
Bye.
Bye.